Okay. Well, perfect. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I'm excited that y'all are here to learn more about your nutrition as you are half marathon training. I have lots of stuff to cover today, but I first want to do a little intro and give you a bit more about like who I am and what my background is. So my name's Emily Moore. I am a registered dietitian. I'm a certified personal trainer and run coach. I'm founder of the Dietitian Runner, so you should check me out on my Instagram page if you get to it. I live in Richmond, so I'm a fellow Richmond runner like you. I have done the Richmond Half and the marathon a few different times. So I am like right here in your community running alongside some of you. And I love food. I love traveling. I love running, obviously. So let's dive in to what I want to cover first. So there are three areas of runner's nutrition. We have your mindset, which is like how you view food, body image, nutrition foundation, which is what you're eating on a daily basis, what foods you're consuming, how you're hydrating, the macronutrient composition of your meals and your snacks, which we'll definitely dive into. And then your micronutrients, which are like your vitamins and minerals. And then, like the icing on the cake, I call it, is run specific nutrition, which is where we're focusing on nutrient timing, which you'll learn all about today. And that is your nutrition right before, during, and after running and races. We'll talk about like carb loading just very briefly today and some strategies here. So those are like the three parts we're going to cover today. I do want to say that I am recovering from a cold. I've been coughing for like 3 days, so I'm hoping I'm not going to cough a lot today, but you'll have to excuse me if I cough a little bit during this. I definitely have my water with me if I need it as well. So bear with me today. Hope my voice stays with me. Let's talk about mindset first. So mindset is really a good starting place when it comes to your nutrition. A lot of times we don't think about mindset and we don't address mindset. We go straight to what we're eating, which is like equally as important, but mindset's a good place to start because mindset and how you view food in your body is going to heavily influence how you're going about fueling and nourishing your body. So right now when you're training, it's not the time to restrict your eating. It's not the time to focus on intentional weight loss. When we're focusing on intentional weight loss, we're putting ourselves in a calorie deficit. And we don't want to combine that with training because your body is at high demand for nutrition and nutrients, and that can set you up for an injury. So why we don't want to restrict our eating, why we don't want to focus on weight loss during training is because nutrient deficiencies can happen, muscle and bone loss, you're putting yourself at increased risk for injury. And I'm sure your goal is to get to race day healthy and ready to run and ready to race and feeling good. And then I listed here a bunch of other consequences that can happen as a result of restricting our eating and not meeting our nutrition needs. So I encourage you, instead of focusing on restriction, which is really what we're focusing on with that, is taking away, like, I can't have this, I can't have this, focusing on like taking things away. And instead of focusing on that mindset or mentality, I encourage you to adopt an optimization mindset. So that is focusing on where we can add nutrients. So a good example of this was my dinner last night. I had like my protein, I had some potatoes for my starch, I had a salad for my color or my veggies, and I thought, how can I further optimize this salad? So I added some walnuts to the salad. I added some fermented beets and carrots to the salad to increase probiotics at that salad. I put olive oil on there and some spices and herbs to like increase the nutrition of that meal. So that's just an example of what a optimization mindset is and how someone with an optimization mindset thinks. So really, like, I encourage you, start looking at meals and snacks and start, especially with the knowledge that you'll gain today, start to really focus on optimizing and adding more nutrients to meals and snacks to better support your body, your health, your performance, and your energy just throughout your daily life. So we want to find a balance between those nutrient dense foods, whole foods, and foods for the soul, I call them. So for me, that's ice cream. That's food for my soul. Sure, an apple could have more nutrition benefits than ice cream, but you know, that's something that I enjoy and I am not going to take that away. Like I can find balance between the two. So I encourage you to try to find balance between those things. And a big, huge, giant PS is that there is no such thing as perfect in nutrition. Aiming to eat perfectly is not attainable. We're not perfect. We're humans, right? So we shouldn't expect our eating and our nutrition to be perfect too. So listening to our body is like such a great thing. We want to be in tune with our body and its cues and learn how to respond to those cues, but know that as a runner, as an athlete, there's going to be times when you might not feel physically hungry, but we want to eat anyway. Some examples of that is before an early morning workout. You'll learn more about pre-run nutrition, but I encourage you to fuel all of your runs, even if they're short 20-minute easy effort run. I encourage you to fuel all types of runs and workouts. So in the morning time, I don't know about you, but like I'm an early morning runner and I never feel like eating, but I make myself eat because I know I just fasted for all these hours and here I am expecting to feel good and perform well during this workout. And I know I can do so much better and perform better, feel better with nutrition. So that's an example. After a workout, especially a long run, you might not feel hungry. It's common not to have a big appetite after a long run, but we want to get nutrition in there to help you recover. And so I listed a few examples below. So we've talked a little bit about mindset. Now let's dive into nutrition foundation. And that is what you are eating and drinking on a daily basis. I'm going to teach you all about my runner's plates framework, my runner's snacks framework. We're going to do a deep dive into the macronutrients, the different types, when we should be focusing on different types versus when should we be focusing on others. I'm going to touch a little bit upon vitamins and minerals, hydration, and then we'll talk about like meal planning, shopping, prepping, and pantry essentials as well. So here are my runner's plates. And I really like this visual and I encourage you to learn these plates and to have them in your head and to use them to help you set up your plate so that you can align your eating with your training. There are 4 parts that you see on here. Let's just focus on, let's focus on this one on the left. This is easy training plate. I'll tell you about it in a sec. But you'll see that there's a grain and starch part. We have a protein part down here. We have a source of fat and we have some color. Color is your fruits and your veggies. So you will see that there are 3 plates and these 3 plates can help you shift your eating in your plate based on your activity. So these are really good to help your eating align with your activity so that you're fueling well and fueling enough. Let's start off with the easy training plate. So that is when we are all the way to the left here. We want to focus on that when we're not in a training cycle. So for all you training, this is not the plate to focus on because it's going to cause under fueling. So easy training plate is when you're not in training, maybe it's the off season, it's for like 20 to 30 minutes of easy effort exercise. Now you'll see that a 1/4 of the plate is your grain and starch. Those are your high carb foods. You have your protein is another 1/4. Half of that is fruits and veggies, and then a source of fat. I put a salad dressing off to the side, but a lot of times fat is incorporated into our plate. Maybe that's like an olive oil dressing on the salad. Maybe that's some avocado, walnuts. You certainly have, this is a piece of tuna. You certainly have some fat in there. And then when we jump to the center plate, which is your moderate training plate, this is appropriate for when you're in a training cycle. So think about like your 30 to 60 minute easy effort runs or easy effort activity. Maybe it's cross training or whatever. You'll see that what we're doing is we're increasing the duration of your training. So when we train more, what we really want to do is look up here. Our grain and starch section, we want to increase that from a 1/4 of the plate to a 1/3 of the plate. And that's because the more activity you're doing, the higher intensity your training is, the higher your carbohydrate needs are, because carbohydrates provide your body with energy and you need more energy with the more training that you're doing. So we bump that up. We can cut back on color a little bit. I say, hey, if you can eat half a plate of color on top of all that, great. Sometimes it comes down to like a volume thing, and it's just too much volume. So you can cut back a little bit, and then your protein and your fat remain consistent, remain the same. Then when we look on the right at this hard training plate, it's appropriate for when we're in a training cycle. Think about your hour or more easy effort type of runs, or if it's 45 minutes with some speed work in there, this hard training plate's appropriate for that type of exercise, that type of workout. You'll see that we're doing more, we're increasing the intensity. So what do we know? The grain and starch section increases to half the plate. Because again, you need more carbs when you're doing more so that you have enough energy to do more and to keep up with that training. We decrease the color to about 1/4 of the plate. We don't totally want to give up color, but we want to just scale back on it a bit. We still want to get some vitamins and minerals and really great components from this color section. But again, it comes down to volume. If you can eat more color than this and all these carbs and protein, go for it. But we could scale back a bit on color, and then protein and fat remain relatively consistent. A question I get all the time is, am I focusing on a certain day of training and eating that plate based on the day? And I say not to necessarily focus on a day, but you want to focus on the week. Look at your average activity throughout the week. Again, we're not focusing on the easy training plate right now. So for you, it's a moderate or hard training plate. And it could be a mixture of both. So for example, maybe most of your weekday runs are between 20 to 60 minutes of, like, you're focusing on easy effort type of running. Then that moderate plate might be appropriate for you, but then you know your long run is going to be over an hour. And I'm sure you're running over an hour by now with your long training runs. So maybe, let's say your run is on a Saturday, your long run's on a Saturday. Maybe you eat the moderate training plate all week long for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then on Friday, you're gearing up and you're shifting more towards that hard training plate. And then that's going to help you prepare for that long run. And then you do your long run on Saturday and you eat that hard training plate for the rest of the day. That's going to help. All those extra carbs is going to help you run well and feel energized that next day on the long run. And it's also going to help you recover by having that hard training plate. It's going to help you replenish. You'll see, I didn't even point this out, but you'll see up here, there's like color, starch, protein, fat, some foods that can fit within those categories there. And you'll be able to access the recording to this, so you can come back here and take a deeper look at that or a closer look at that if you need to. So really, when your training increases, there are 3 main things that are going to significantly increase. So when you're training more, when you're running more miles, your calorie requirements will increase, your carb requirements will increase, and your fluid requirements will increase. So if we are, let's say, increasing our training, but we're stuck at an easy training plate, which that's under fueling, your activity and your eating aren't going to be aligned. Your eating is way down here and your activity is way up here. So we want to adjust that plate up and follow that moderate or hard training plate, depending on what your weeks look like, so that your eating aligns with your activity and you could support your activity. Because when we're under fueling, we're going to experience low energy in our daily lives during running. We're going to experience poor recovery. Our chances of hitting the wall during running is going to be high, and you're putting yourself at increased risk for injury. So some tips and some things to think about, especially as your training increases, use that runner's plate framework and especially adjust that grain and starch portion so that you are giving your body the appropriate carbs that it needs to support your training. Don't be afraid of snacking. I will fill you in on what a balanced snack looks like shortly. So snacking and snacks in between meals can be helpful, especially in getting your body more calories, more carbohydrates, and then really be intentional about drinking your fluids all throughout the day. Start early, sip all throughout the day, and go into your training runs and long run well hydrated. Now, just a note on calories. Calories get such a bad rap, but the definition of a calorie is a unit of energy. Know that calories are not bad. Calories are essential to keep you alive, to keep you feeling well, to keep you training and performing well. They are a friend here. They're not an enemy, just like carbohydrates. They are really amazing nutrients and tools that will help you feel good and train good. Now know that our macronutrients, there's technically 4. Today we're going to talk about 3, and 3 are essential for all runners. Carb, fat, protein, and then alcohol is one that's not essential. We're not going to talk about that today. But know that those provide your body with energy or calories. Our micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, like sodium and potassium and calcium, vitamin D, those are awesome and they play different roles within the body, but know that those don't provide your body with calories. So runner snacks, know that they're beneficial for marathoners, but also half marathoners and any type of runner, right? Snacks can help you meet your high energy demands and can help you feel energized all throughout the day. The anatomy of a runner snack has 2 parts, carbs and protein, because as a runner, you have higher carb requirements and higher protein requirements. So having snacks that contain both those macronutrients can help you better meet your daily goals. And then there's a bonus for adding like a fruit or vegetable for some more color, or some more vitamins and minerals. Now we want to focus on nutrient-dense snacks. As again, I said, we want to focus on nutrient-dense foods and a balance of those foods for the soul. But here are some examples of what could provide you with a well-balanced snack. So like the first is a cottage cheese cup and then an apple. So here, the cottage cheese, that is our high protein food. So when we look at our foods and we look at different food labels, all of our foods, most of our foods have a blend of macronutrients. So cottage cheese has some fat, unless it's fat-free, has some protein and has some carbs, but it's highest in protein, and it's a really good source of protein. I think this little cup here has about 18 grams. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere between 15 to 20 grams. And that I call our high protein food. The apple there is both color and carb, so we can kind of count that as both. This is a protein bar, an RX bar, and a banana. And then we have crackers, cheese, and bell peppers. This is a peanut butter packet. Peanut butter is typically like our high fat food. This nut butter packet here is about 9 grams of protein, so I'm counting this as our high protein food here. It's an RX bar brand. And then you see the rest of the snacks here. So just some examples of some well-balanced snacks. We don't want to eat a snack that's just carb, but we don't want to eat a snack that's just protein. We want and need that blend. I hope I don't start coughing now. Something to really think about is, in order to create these balanced meals and use that runner's plate framework, in order to set up our snacks with those 2 essential components, we need to plan for it. We need to shop so that we have those ingredients on hand and do any sort of prep. Sometimes I mention like meal prep and I get like big eyes staring at me, and it's, panic. Like, Emily, I don't have time to like spend half a day to like prep everything that I'm going to eat for the week. And it certainly can look like that, but it doesn't have to look like that. Prep for me and what works well for me is prepping like some protein, maybe prepping a snack or 2, maybe doing some like overnight oats. And that's like my type of meal prep. It takes about an hour, maybe hour and a half, but it sets me up well for the week, especially if I have a really busy day. I know it takes a lot of time to train. I know you have jobs. I know you're taking care of family. You're cleaning the house, pets maybe. So I point to my dog who's laying next to me. So you have a lot on your plate. So if you can have some sort of system to help you build out these balanced meals and to make meals quicker and easier to build out during your week, like do that. Like find some sort of system for you and your family so that you can fuel and nourish your body well during even really busy weeks. Also, think about some things you can have on hand. And I listed some of my go-tos here. A huge one in my house is frozen rice. So I have like frozen rice bags. I put them in the oven, excuse me. I put them in the microwave for like 3 minutes, and I have like this huge bag of rice. Definitely enough for like multiple people. Frozen veggies is a good one. If you need a quick color, on that plate, pop some frozen veggies in the microwave and you have some veggies. Frozen fruit and veggies are just as nutritious as fresh. Typically, they're picked at like peak ripeness, so they're like really rich in vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. So just kind of think about some things, maybe add some things to your grocery list this weekend and start to build up your freezer or your pantry, or look to see what you have on hand and be creative with putting those ingredients together to make an easy meal or an easy snack. Hydration should be a focus all throughout the week. So your goal is to be well hydrated going into all of your training workouts. Benefits of hydration I listed here. It protects your joints and your tissues. It helps with digestion and metabolism, body temperature regulation. It helps transport nutrients, oxygen, waste all throughout the body and out of the body. A fun fact is that your muscles are 75% water. So being hydrated, yes, supports different systems in your body, like your cardiovascular system, but it also is really supportive of your muscles and your muscle functioning. And being hydrated can really support performance too. So what counts as fluids? I know you're wondering this. All fluids. Look at the list that I wrote out for you here. Also think about like water-rich fruits, veggies. Like the things I think about first are watermelon. I think of peaches. I think of grapefruit. I think of oranges, lettuce, cucumbers. So I know that those are hard to measure, and add to your daily fluid intake, but know that you're getting some extra fluid through fruits and veggies as well. So to figure out how much fluid your body needs each day, what I want you to do is take your weight, cut it in half, and that's how many ounces of fluid to aim for each day. So like a 160-pound runner needs to aim for 80 ounces a day, but know that that's baseline. We want to add more fluids to that if you are sweating, because we want to make up for that sweat loss and we want to replenish fluids that you lose through your sweat. So a general rule of thumb is to add 16 to 24 ounces of fluid for every pound you lose during exercise. If the scale is triggering to you, please don't get on that. I don't want to make you feel bad about yourself or make you change your eating habits or anything like that. What you can do, and what I typically do, to be honest, is drink an extra water bottle or two. So I will try to drink at least like 20 or so ounces, depending on how heavy I sweat, but you could just add a few water bottles and you should be okay and good to go. So just some tips for hydration. Start sipping early in the day. Now and then, I'm typically really good about hydration, but now and then if I have like a busy morning or appointments or whatever, it's like 12 o'clock and I'm like, oh shoot, I took one sip of fluid and now I have to get like all 100 ounces in these amount of hours, and then I'm going to be up like peeing all night. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to, if you wait too long, it's hard to play catch up. And we don't really want to do that. Like when we chug fluids, like most of that gets peed out. So we want to like sip on your fluids all throughout the day, avoid chugging. Don't wait until you're thirsty to drink, like sip throughout the day. Have your water bottle, like I have my water bottle right next to you, my laptop right now. So it reminds me, like sip fluids all throughout the day. It's a good reminder for me. You could set a water goal. So like my goal is, like I have a water bottle right next to me that is 40 ounces. My goal is 3 of those a day. So I get one in before lunch, I get one in the afternoon, and I finish another one before I go to bed. Hopefully a few hours before bed if you don't want to stay up and get up frequently and use the bathroom in the middle of the night. So you can set yourself a goal. And if you get tired of plain water, like you know that all fluids count. So maybe you put some, I don't know, vitamin water in there, body armor, I know is popular, fruit infused water, you can make your own. So you can branch out a bit from water too if you need to. So now let's do a macronutrient deep dive. And here we're going to cover carb, fat, and protein in depth. And I'm going to share with you everything you need to know about all of these macronutrients. And you need all of them as a runner, as a half marathoner, if you're a marathoner as well, if you run 10Ks, if you're a 5Ker, you need all 3. All humans need all 3. So carbohydrates, we'll start there. We are team carbs here. Carbs are super important. They are not the enemy. They are important to keep you energized, and you're going to learn about all of the things carbs can help your body do. So carbs is our body's preferred source of fuel. When we eat carbs, essentially we break it down into simple sugars. And then those simple sugars are used for energy. And we also store those simple sugars as glycogen in our liver and in our muscles. The function of our liver glycogen is to regulate our blood sugar levels. So especially like if you think about it, when you're sleeping at night, you're not eating, and that liver glycogen can help to keep our blood sugar levels stable and prevent them from dropping to like dangerously low levels. Now, the liver can store about 80 to 100 grams. We also store glycogen in our muscles. And I think of that as like our energy store. And I compare that to a car. So, like, our muscle glycogen is the fuel tank of a car. And when we are sleeping at night, when we are running long distances, especially, we are pulling from and pulling more, especially on long runs, we're pulling from these stores to use as energy to keep us going, to keep our muscles contracting, because our muscles use carbs and sugar to keep functioning and to keep contracting. So in our muscles throughout the body, we can store up to 300 to 400 grams. Now, when we are running, those stores typically exhaust around an hour and a half to 2 hours of running. So this is why for long runs, we need to take in carbs to help fuel that long run, especially when our stores are depleted. We'll dive into that and talk more about that in just a bit. So let's look at this guy over here, and let's look at this guy here. So we'll look at the guy on the left first. So this person on the left, they are not meeting their carbohydrate needs. They're falling short. They're not eating carbs at meals and snacks. They're not getting enough. They're under fueling. Look at how low their glycogen tank is. It's barely there. They're running on low. If we look at this person over here on the right, he has very full glycogen stores. He's making sure he's eating a runner's plate with carbs on it. He's making sure he has carbs at snacks. His glycogen stores are going to be a lot more optimized and a lot more full. This person is going to be able to feel great when they run. They're going to have energy to run. They're going to be able to run longer. Muscle fatigue is going to be postponed. Their chances of hitting the wall is going to be low during running, during races. This person over here on the left, they're not going to feel so hot. They're not going to be able to keep up with the person with the high glycogen stores. Fatigue is going to set in earlier. Their chances of hitting the wall are going to be high. So we want to make sure we're eating enough carbs so that we can have carbs to use as energy, but also so our glycogen stores are adequately optimized and full. Another benefit of carbs is that they support our brain. The brain uses at least 130 grams of carbs a day. And that's just your brain. Think about all the other organs, the tissues in your body, running on top of all of that. So 130 grams looks like 2 pieces of bread, plus a banana, plus a cup of rice, and a handful of pretzels. So you can imagine that when you throw all your other organs and tissues on top of this, plus running, you can imagine how high your carbohydrate needs are. Carbs also protect you from injury. When we are meeting our needs and we're eating enough carbohydrates, our body is getting the fuel it wants and it can leave other things alone within the body. When we are not eating enough carbohydrates, when we are especially exercising with those low glycogen stores, we're going to be breaking down more muscle to use. And if we're chronically underfueling with carbs, we're not getting enough, we're going to be breaking down more muscle. And that loss of lean skeletal muscle or lean muscle mass over time is not good. Your body is essentially breaking down its own muscle to use as fuel so it can survive. And that can lead to a reduction in strength and set you up for a big whopping injury. So if we're getting enough carbs, our body doesn't have to go to muscle and break down muscle to use as fuel. Now, there are 2 types of carbohydrates. I'm sure you've heard of these 2 different groups: complex carbs and refined simple carbs. And I read things all the time and it drives me crazy. Complex carbs are good carbs and refined and simple are bad carbs. And that drives me nuts because that is not true. And we don't want to categorize our food as that. Our food has no like moral value. Food is food. Sure, we can get different benefits from different types of carbs, but both have a place in your nutrition. There are times when I would recommend to you, hey, let's focus on those simple refined carbs and not focus on the complex. Our complex carbs are high fiber. Think about like whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta, fruit, starchy veggies like corn, peas, potatoes, lentils, black beans, chickpeas, etc. Refined simple carbs are low to no fiber. White bread, white pasta, foods with added sugar. Like I think of cookies for some reason right now. Maybe I should have cookie for dessert tonight. Sounds pretty good. Juice, Gatorade. So those are some examples of simple refined carbs. Now, when we have meals and snacks away from exercise, focusing on complex carbs is great. We get extra fiber, we get extra nutrients in with those complex carbs. But the closer we get to exercise, let's say you have a 6 a.m. run and you need to fuel before that run. You're not going to get up hours early to eat a full meal and run. So instead, we can focus on refined, simple carbohydrates. And I should say, if you want to get up early and eat that meal and digest, you can. But I know most of us won't do that. Just being real. So we want to focus on those refined, simple carbs because there's low to no fiber there. There's nothing like slowing down digestion. You'll be able to quickly digest anything that falls underneath that low to no fiber category. So I think of it as like a Gatorade with sugar. I think of it as a glass of juice, or let's say graham crackers, for example. So those are just some timing things to focus on with the types of carbs. During exercise, most of our sports nutrition products are low fiber, refined, simple carbs. But if we're fueling with food, we want to make sure it's low fiber. We'll talk a lot more about that in just a little bit. Now, I show you this to point out one thing. So if you're not a numbers person, it's okay. I have a takeaway for you anyway. These are the sports guidelines for daily carb intake for runners. So we look on the left-hand column in pink, and that is daily carbohydrate requirements in grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight per day. On the right side, you'll see exercise. And you'll notice as you go down this category, down both categories actually, they increase. So the exercise category, we're increasing the duration and the intensity of exercise. So know that the longer you're training, the higher intensity your training is, the more carbs you need. That's the only takeaway that I want you to get from this. If you're a numbers person, great, here are the numbers. This can definitely go back to that runner's plate. And that's another visual way to do it without the numbers, is to increase that grain starch section on the plate like you just learned. Now, fat is our next macronutrient. Fat we use for energy. We use fat to make hormones. We use fat to absorb certain fat-soluble vitamins, they're called, and we store fat as adipose tissue within the body. A really cool thing about fat and why we want fat on your plate at meals is because vitamin A, vitamin D, E, and K you see listed here, these are called fat-soluble vitamins, meaning they need fat to be present in order to be absorbed and absorbed well. So a perk about having a source of fat on your plate is that it will help your body to absorb these vitamins from the food that's on your plate that you're going to eat. I recommend to focus on heart-healthy unsaturated fat. So unsaturated fat, we get so many benefits to them. There's 4 different types of fat, but what I want you to focus on is the unsaturated fat: olive oil, avocado oil, avocado, nut seeds, and fatty fish. I listed 2 here, salmon and tuna. A perk of fatty fish is that we get omega-3s from fatty fish. Now, there are things called essential fats. So omega-6, omega-3, those are examples of essential fats. Most of us are getting plenty of omega-6s, but not enough of omega-3s. Most of us don't eat enough fatty fish and aren't getting fatty fish regularly into our diet or what we're eating, our meals, snacks, whatever. So omega-3s are important, and I highlighted this here because most of us don't get enough, and we're missing out on all these great benefits. Omega-3s can help reduce inflammation within your body and oxidative stress. They can also reduce DOMS, so that delayed onset muscle soreness. So an example of this is on Monday, I did a arm strength workout, upper body and core workout. I felt fine the rest of the day. I felt fine the next day, and then it hit me. What's today? Wednesday? It hit me today, and I definitely felt it today during my workout. So that's an example of DOMS. Omega-3s are also like, there's tons of research showing the benefits for brain health, heart health. So they're really important fats that we want to get in regularly. If you don't eat fatty fish at all or don't like fish, you'd probably benefit from a supplement. I'd recommend to like work with your doctor or dietitian or get dietitian's advice on omega-3s. Just a little quick thing about supplements, because I think I cover this later on. We want third-party tested supplements. So we want to make sure they're third-party tested. So last but not least is protein. Protein is definitely known for muscle repair and building. But we also use protein to make hormones and to make enzymes within our body. And enzymes are these things that are needed for all of the systems and chemical reactions that occur in the body on a daily basis that's essential for life. Now, let's look at this whole Lego structure here. And I want you to think of this whole structure as protein. Think of these little individual Lego pieces as amino acids. So protein is made up of amino acids. When we eat protein, it breaks down to amino acids, those little pieces. When we look at the different types of Lego pieces or amino acids, there's two types. We have essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. Essential amino acids, I think of as, they're called essential because they're essential for us to eat because our body can't make them. Non-essential are important, absolutely. Our body can make those. Now, if we go like take a step back and look at the protein structure, there's two different types of proteins. One type of protein is called complete, and one is called incomplete. Complete proteins contain all of those essential amino acids that we can't make. So that makes them a complete source of protein. Incomplete protein is missing some of those essential amino acids. So you'll see that complete sources over here, I listed in this little diagram here. Most of our animal, I should say all of our animal sources are complete proteins. We do have some plant sources as well that are plant proteins too. Again, those are containing all those essential amino acids that we need. Incomplete protein is missing some of those essential amino acids, again, as a reminder, and these are mostly your plant sources. So think of like almonds and black beans. Now, it's not like all my plant-based vegan athletes are doomed, right? It's just, especially if you are solely relying on plants for protein, just focusing on variety is a really great move because different plant protein sources have different amounts and types of those essential amino acids. So when we aim for variety, we're more likely to meet what we need. So we shouldn't just rely on like tofu, for example, as like our only source of protein. We want to branch out and have like a good variety of plant proteins to help us get what we need. Now, the daily protein recommendation for runners is quite large. It's 1.2 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. If you're not a numbers person, it's okay. Focus on the runner's plates, adding your protein source there. Focus on protein at meals, and then we'll talk about protein timing post-workout. We'll talk about recovery nutrition in a bit as well. Now, I don't have time, unfortunately, to talk about micronutrients in depth. I could probably sit here for the next like 4 hours talking about every single micronutrient and its role and what foods are high in micronutrients, but I won't do that to you today. And I'm just going to highlight some of them that are really important. They're all important, don't get me wrong, but there are a certain handful of vitamins and minerals that are especially important because as runners, we can become at risk for becoming low or deficient in certain ones. And some we lose like in our sweat and we have higher losses as runners. Some of those is sodium, iron, vitamin D, calcium, potassium, magnesium, B12. Now, these are all, like I said, all really important. Runners tend to have higher micronutrient requirements, especially of these, because we can lose them in certain ways. Now, I never recommend going out and buying a supplement without first knowing what your blood work is. Iron, for example, if we're supplementing with iron and we don't need iron, iron builds up in the blood and can reach toxic levels. I've seen it. I've seen a runner who thought she was iron deficient. She ended up like on a high dose supplement. It's like 65 milligrams of iron, took it every single day, got her lab work done, and her iron labs and her iron panel was through the roof. So now we're dealing with toxicity issues and trying to lower her iron, which is really hard to do. So um, iron is one that like we can't just pee out if we get too much of it. Vitamin C, if we get too much, it's okay. We can pee it out. It's not the end of the world, but iron is more dangerous, I guess, than that. So like have your blood work done and then see if a supplement is recommended for you. You can go to your doctor and request lab work. You can go to Inside Tracker. I just had my blood work results back today from Inside Tracker. So definitely check up on your blood. I do recommend for runners to like make sure you get blood work done at least once a year, twice a year if you're running a lot of endurance races. We definitely want like a full iron panel. We want vitamin D, and any other labs that we can get would be great. To ensure that you are getting micronutrients and the right amounts of micronutrients, what you could do is eat a variety of foods, a variety of colors. Don't eat like the same lunch every single day and the same breakfast every single day for the rest of your life. Like vary it up. Try new foods, try new colors. That can help you meet your micronutrient requirements. Okay, now I'm going to talk about running nutrition. And here we're going to talk about pre, during, and post-run nutrition. This is really where we're focusing on something called nutrient timing. So we are strategically timing our nutrient intake around and during exercise to support energy levels, to enhance performance, and to support recovery. So let's start off with talking about pre-run nutrition. So most of this content that we're going to talk about is centered around that long run. So we're really focusing on the long run in the race. So the day before, the night before the race, I encourage you to follow that hard training plate for the whole day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. This is how you can optimize and build up those glycogen stores so that you start your run optimized, ready to go. Hydrate well, fluids, maybe an electrolyte drink the night before, especially if you know it's going to be hot, you're going to be sweating out there. I live in Richmond too, and I am like the saltiest, heaviest sweater in the world. Maybe not, but you know, I definitely make sure I put an electrolyte drink there because I know I'm going to be losing a ton the next day. Carb-rich options I listed here. For dinner the night before, we want to start thinking, like the marathon I know is a few months out, but we want to start thinking about what is a good dinner that I tolerate really well during my training that's carb-rich, that could be a good dinner before the race day, the night before the race. So for me, that's pasta. I am going to have pasta with either salmon or chicken, maybe like a teeny bit of veggies in there, but I'm going to make sure that that's really carb-rich. And like that's my go-to meal for before training runs and before like long runs and before my race. So we want to identify that dinner that works well for us, that feels good in our stomach and gives us energy for the next run the next day. And then that will just become your dinner the night before the race. Same with the morning of. So the morning of, we also want to be thinking about what is a good breakfast that I tolerate really well before my long runs, what's going to give me lots of carbs, and then that can turn into your race day breakfast. Now, I recommend to fuel all workouts. Like if it's a strength workout, fuel it. If it's a cross training workout, fuel it. If it's a 20-minute easy effort run, fuel it. You will feel better, and that's a really great way to support your body during that workout and after. It actually can help with recovery. So here are some ideas of really, like I get this question all the time. What should I eat if I'm going on this run on the weekend? And I always say, well, what's the time that you have to digest? Because that's going to determine what you eat and how much time you do have to digest what you just ate, excuse me. So if you are waking up and you have a few hours before your long run, eat a full meal. It maybe doesn't look like a turkey sandwich, but you're eating a full meal with all those runner's plates parts. If you have 2 hours, like you get up, and I would say 2 hours before a long run's pretty good, pretty good thing to aim for. Get up, eat a larger snack, put some carbs there, put as many carbs there as possible, put carbs there, protein, fluids, give yourself time to digest, and then run. If you have less than an hour before, choose low fiber carbs and fluids. So like banana, applesauce pouch, graham crackers, like I mentioned before, are some ideas. Now, know that if you are going on like a easy effort run that's less than an hour, know that like having a banana with an applesauce pouch or a few graham crackers and a banana, like that's could cut it for that, for like the shorter runs, anything under an hour, but know that that's not going to cut it for a long run. We want to wake up, we want to eat a more substantial breakfast, and we want to fuel that run the best that we can so that we train well. Because the better you support your training with nutrition, the better you're going to perform on race day. You're setting yourself up to perform better. So during run nutrition, there's 3 parts here that I want to make sure that you're planning and including in your during run plan. We want carbs, we want fluids, and we want electrolytes. Now I put this note in here because there are athletes who like the idea, and I totally get it, of using like fat for fuel instead of carbs. And I get it, but here's why we want carbs. The intensity of your exercise is going to determine if we are prioritizing fat or carbs. There'll never be a time when we use just fat for fuel and just carbs for fuel. We will be using a mixture and we will be using a ratio. At lower intensity, let's say walking, your body is going to be using more fat for fuel than carbs. But when we pick that up and do a jog and then a run, even if it's easy effort, what we're doing is we're going to be shifting, and then our body's going to prioritize more carbs for fuel. And that's because when we are running, we need energy and we need it now. Our body is at higher demand for energy to keep up with that run. So the process of using fat for fuel and converting fat to energy is so slow, and it's not a reliable source. So that's why the body prefers carbs, because it's a fast fuel source. The body can break it down, digest it, convert it to energy, and be able to meet those higher energy demands that you have during running. So that's why we want to take in carbs during running. Now, when we're focusing on carbs, the type of carbs is low fiber, and sugar is best. Sugar is not something we need to be afraid of. I've been on lots of different group runs, and my ears perk up when I hear people talk about nutrition, and I hear a lot of things about sugar and how we don't want to use certain products because it's high in sugar, but that's the whole point. The whole point to have sugar in these sports nutrition products like gels is for energy. Like our body can use that so efficiently and so well for energy. The muscles use that for energy. It's nothing we have to be afraid of. Why we want to focus on sugar and low fiber carbs is that when you and I are sitting here now, we have blood flow to our digestive tract. When we're running, some of that blood flow to our digestive tract is being sent away and instead sent to our working muscles to deliver oxygen, to deliver nutrients. So with that decrease in blood flow to our digestive tract during running, that slows our digestion. So we don't want to be eating a bunch of fiber, a bunch of fat even during running, because those two nutrients slow digestion, and that's not going to set you up for feeling so good. I'm sure you're going to have some issues. I'm sure you might have to run to the porta potty or Mother Nature, and we don't want to set you up that way. So like sugar and low fiber carbs is what we want to choose. Most of our nutrition products, like you see, GU, Noon Endurance, those have simple sugars in them. And like that's a beautiful thing about sports products. I would still double check. There's like sports products that are designed for like ultra marathoners who are out there like all day running. Their nutrition needs are a bit different. So just double check, but we want to choose something with low fiber. Some foods that are lower in fiber are listed up here, you'll see. Now, on the half marathon course, you have GU at mile 8, and you have Noon Endurance available at the start, and then 2, 4, 6, and then 8 to 12. So you're well supported there at the end, especially when you're going to want to, stop often and keep up with hydration. So the thing that I want to just mention about that is one GU at mile 8 will not be enough to get you through that run. We'll talk about amounts in just a sec of carbs during running, but that is, if you're using one gel to fuel half, that's under fueling and not like supporting your body very well at all. So we want to bring extra fuel with us. And then you have a junk food stop at mile 9, pickle juice at 10. And I wrote a note just to be cautious because race day is not the time to try new things around the race, not the time to try new foods, new products during the race. I had a horrible experience with some candy at mile 18 or 19 of a marathon, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I never did it before. It was my first marathon. Come a long way, and we've learned a lot, a lot since then. But stick with what is familiar to you, stick with what you've had, and start practicing taking in carbs now during training. So here are sports guidelines for how many carbs we should take in during training. When we are out there running less than an hour, generally not needed. When we're running 1 to 2.5 hours, we want to aim for 30 to 60 or more grams of carbs. Including carbs in those fluids can be really helpful. If we're planning for like a half of 2.5 hours or more, we need more carbs because we're going to be out there longer. So really, how many carbs to take in depends on how long you'll be out there. Create your half marathon training plan now with this information. Start practicing it now. Maybe your training run is like 2 hours, but I would still practice the whole darn thing because you want to get to race day with a plan that you've practiced, tried, you're comfortable with, and it's like a habit. You don't have to really think about timing and all of that. You like nailed it down. And definitely use the same products that you'll use on race day. If you plan to use GU, if you plan to use Noon Endurance, get those products and start practicing with that during your training. Now, fluids is the second part of during run nutrition, and the goal of taking in fluids is to not be dehydrated, not get dehydrated, which is when we lose greater than 2% of our body weight. When we lose weight during running, it's not true body weight that we're losing, it's all fluid loss. When we see athletes lose like 3, 4, 5% of their body weight during running, they're getting too dehydrated and their performance is going to significantly start to tank. So some signs of dehydration to be on the lookout for, I listed here. Fatigue, headache, nausea, vomiting, dark urine. And really, like, how much fluid to take in during running is based on you and your sweat rate. Everyone has a different sweat rate. I'm a heavy sweater. I know that about myself. I've done a sweat test, I've measured, and I know I lose a significant amount of fluids each hour of running, even if it's easy effort. Of course, the environment and training temperatures will affect that. So typically when it's hot, humid, you're going to be losing more sweat than maybe the winter, or maybe in the winter you lose just as much. But the average athlete loses about 1 liter per hour of sweat. Now, when we're running less than an hour, taking in fluids isn't necessary, but honestly, know your body and take in fluids if you are a heavy sweater. When we're running over an hour, we want to aim for 14 to 27 ounces per hour. And we want to hit that each hour, starting in hour 1. We want to be proactive with our fluids and start drinking it within the first 10 to 15 minutes. So I don't know, actually maybe you ran Ashland. I don't know if you've run Ashland half, but the Ashland 5K was so hot and humid out there. I was out there. I started sipping fluids within the first few minutes. I didn't even wait till 10 minutes because I knew it was hot and I really needed to like stay on top of it early and continue throughout the whole race. Practice taking in fluids. See where you're at now. Like, how many ounces do you think you're aiming for or getting in now? And then if you're way outside of that range, like build up to goal. And then of course, like if you're planning to run with a hydration vest on race day, practice carrying that. If you plan to run with a handheld, practice carrying that so that it's just something that you're used to and you just do one more time on race day. A way to use your weight and figure out what your sweat rate is to use your weight and weigh yourself before exercise without clothes on, weigh yourself after exercise without clothes on because we don't want the weight of those clothes. And then you can calculate that weight change percentage. So I give you an example down at the bottom, a pre-run weight of like 175 pounds, post-run weight of 169. So we're losing 6 pounds here. That's 3.4% weight loss, and anything over 2 is where dehydration kind of kicks in, or what counts as dehydration. So if you are losing greater than 2%, you can say, okay, I'm not drinking enough fluids. I need to increase my fluid intake. If you're gaining weight, that's also not good. That means your sweat rate is down here and your hydration is up here. You're just taking in too much fluid. Your fluid intake is much greater than your loss. I would say if this is like triggering to you at all, like seeing the number on the scale, weighing yourself, don't do it. There's other ways and we'll cover that. So electrolytes, just like fluid, is the loss and needs of your body during running is based on you as the runner. Everyone is different. Like sodium, for example, some athletes have a lower amount of sodium and lose a lower amount of sodium in their sweat, and others lose a significant amount. But we do lose these 5 electrolytes through our sweat: sodium, chloride, potassium, magnesium, calcium. We lose the most sodium, chloride, and potassium, and just small trace amounts of magnesium and calcium. So here are sports guidelines for electrolytes during running. When we're running less than an hour, not necessary, but again, just like fluids, know your body. If you're a heavy sweater, if you're a salty sweater, if you have like salt crystals on your skin after runs, if you have white stains on the brim of your hat, if you have white stains on your clothes, that's all salt loss. So it'd be a good idea to take in electrolytes even on shorter runs. There's a specific recommendation for when we're running over an hour, we want to make sure we're taking in electrolytes, but there's a specific recommendation for sodium, and that is 300 to 600 or more milligrams of sodium per hour. So we want to make sure to hit that. We can do that by these different ways. Drinking Noon Endurance. We could choose higher electrolyte gels like Huma Plus. We can choose and capsules with electrolytes like Salt Stick Chews, Salt Stick Caps. And know the more that you sweat, the more electrolytes that you could lose through your sweat. So again, here are some signs of being a salty sweater. You have all the white on the face. That is all these white crystals. This is salt. Salt stains is all this white here. Something that I want you to be aware of is exercise-associated hyponatremia. And that is basically when your blood sodium concentration dips too low. And over drinking, especially drinking dilute fluids like water, and especially in combination with having high sodium sweat losses, those are contributing factors to this. So this is why we want to make sure we're hitting our sodium needs each hour that we just looked at, the 300 to 600 plus milligrams an hour. That's why we want to take in electrolytes when especially we're running over an hour, is to prevent this. And here are some symptoms here. As I've experienced this, it's not pretty. It doesn't feel great. It really stinks. But like I said, focusing on electrolytes, adding in sodium to our liquids or in the form of like electrolyte capsules or chews can be really helpful in helping you avoid this. Also, like evaluating your weight before and after. Again, if you gain weight, that means you're over drinking. So I don't know if I've tossed around the word sweat rate, and I know I'm kind of over in my time, so I hope you can bear with me. I just have so much great stuff to share with you. So hang on for as long as you can, and then you can watch the recording if you can't hang much longer. So to identify your individual sweat rate, that's the amount of fluid your body loses per hour of exercise. Know that your sweat rate can change in different conditions. For example, sweat rate in the summertime versus the winter could look very different. Again, you can weigh yourself before exercise. You can weigh yourself after exercise, keep track of that data. You could keep track of the fluids that you're drinking in during exercise, and then you could input that into an online sweat rate calculator. Gatorade as an example. And I wouldn't just do this once, I do it multiple times so that you have multiple data points and you're able to find an average of that. And then that can help you build out a very specific fluid plan. Now, if weighing yourself again isn't something that you're interested in or something that's triggering to you in any way, another alternative to this is a sweat test. So there are many companies out there, but here are two, Levelin and H-Drop. The cool thing about a sweat test is that it can help you identify what your sweat rate is, help you identify what your electrolyte concentration is in your sweat, and how much electrolytes you're losing through your sweat. So this is me, actually this is running Ashland's half marathon last year. I put that into a marathon training cycle. I ran New York City last year. So I wanted to be very, I guess I wanted to build out a very individualized plan for myself for electrolytes and fluid during New York. So I wore this, it's the H-Drop sweat test. I wore this and then I got some really awesome data. I wore it for like tons of runs and I was able to build out that plan accordingly. So just some really cool options there if you wanted to get very individualized with it. Here is a during run nutrition sample plan, and I'm using what will be available to you on the course. So we are using GU and we are using Noon Endurance, and you'll see both of these labels here. When we are fueling at, like, so let's say we're gonna be out there for over 2.5 hours. Our goal is 60 to 90 grams of carbs an hour. When we are exceeding that 60 gram of carb an hour mark, when we're exceeding that with our fueling plan, we want to aim for a blend of carb types. So you'll see two types circled here, maltodextrin and fructose, or fructose and glucose. And that is because glucose, for example, we basically absorb these simple sugars through our small intestine. And we have these different transporters, absorption transporters that sit on our small intestine and help us to absorb those simple sugars into our bloodstream, which can then be converted to energy, metabolized, all of that. So our glucose transporter, for example, that gets saturated at 60 grams of glucose per hour. So when we're fueling at 70, 75 grams of carbs an hour, and we're only focusing on one type, glucose, we're going to oversaturate that intestinal transporter, and it can lead to GI issues. So when we're choosing two different types of carbs, we're spreading them out among different transporters, and our tolerance is going to be better at higher amounts. So just a little tidbit about that. So here is the energy gel here. We see that it has 22 grams of carbs. It has 60 milligrams of sodium. We have some calcium here, some potassium. Here is our Noon Endurance. And one scoop of that has 380 milligrams of sodium. We see that it has 16 grams of carbs, 15 of sugar, but 16 of carbs. And we want to use these labels then to build out our plan. So here is an example of a plan to get you to your goal or to the sports guidelines. So we want to take 2 gels an hour, which will give us 44 grams of carbs. You'll see how much sodium that provides. We want to take at least 3 Noon cups per hour on the course. That's going to give us about 12 ounces of fluid. I look at the cups that are provided on courses are generally 4 to 5 ounces, which 1 ounce is typically 1 large sip or 1 gulp. That's how I kind of convert that. Going to give us some carbs, some sodium there. And our total nutrition per hour is 56 grams of carbs. We have 406 milligrams of sodium and 12 ounces of fluid. So we're good on the carbs, we're good on the sodium, we're a little short on the fluid. So what this could look like in real life is you take your first gel 30 minutes into the race. So when you're running for 30 minutes, take that gel. Second gel, you take 30 minutes later, so at an hour into the race, and then you continue to take in a gel every 30 minutes of running. You stop at each water stop to grab a cup of Noon, Again, your goal is 3 cups of noon per hour. And what I'd recommend is we're falling short on fluids. We want to get up within that 14 to 27 ounce range. So we can either take extra cups from the aid station, or we can store extra fluid on us and sip in between the aid station. Maybe that looks like a handheld bottle, a belt, or a vest, to get in some extra fluid so that we can better meet those fluid requirements. Lots of different gear options here. You'll see all them listed out. So recovery nutrition. So we talked about pre, we talked about during, and here's post. Post-run nutrition, also known as recovery nutrition. The goal is to provide your body with nutrients to support recovery. Your body needs nutrients to do its thing, to replenish and to repair, and it can't do it so well without those nutrients or without nutrition. We want to be intentional about getting in that nutrition as soon as we can after exercise. If we're waiting hours and hours and hours, especially if you're known to have like a decreased appetite and we're waiting hours and hours until we finally feel hungry to eat, what we're doing is we're delaying our recovery. And that can cause an inadequate recovery in between training that can increase our risk for injury. So there are a few different options here. A goal is to have that runner's plate with all those runner's plates parts on it after finishing a workout. Or it could be to grab a snack that has carb, protein, and fluid, and then follow it up with a runner's plate. So maybe like, and I feel like this is especially, you might relate to this after a long run. You do your long run, you hang out afterwards with the group, you drive home, you get home, you cool down, you shower, you get ready, and before you know it, hours go by and you haven't had a single thing of nutrition. So I would recommend to put a snack in place to get your body those nutrients so it can start to do its thing, and then you can follow that up with a meal after. And I put just some different snack ideas here. In a snack, we want carbs, protein, and then our fluids and electrolytes. Now, remember, we can get electrolytes from supplements, but we can also get it from food, so food counts. Here are some sources of sodium and chloride-rich foods, potassium-rich foods, magnesium-rich foods, and calcium-rich foods. So yes, we can take a supplement, Liquid IV, Tailwind, Scratch Labs, Gatorade, but know that we can also replenish through food as well. Now, nutrition with poor appetite, I know that can be common. So if this is you, absolutely listen up here, because again, we don't want to wait hours and hours until after, until we feel hungry after a long run, especially without nutrition, because that's not going to help our recovery. A lot of times, I know with me, like I don't necessarily feel hungry all the time after a run, but like I make sure I get that nutrition in one way or the other. With a poor appetite, liquids can be really helpful. Small, frequent meals, grazing, and then when you can get that meal in, get that meal in. For some people, it looks like nutrient-rich liquids and like small, frequent meals all day long. But we want to be intentional about adding in lots of nutrients, as many nutrients as we can. Having that optimization mindset, getting carbs in there, getting protein in there, getting some healthy fats in there, whether it's smoothies or protein drinks or whatever. We want to try to optimize our nutrition so that we can support our recovery. And it's okay if you're extra hungry the day after a long run. There's nothing wrong with you. Your body is asking you for food. Think of it as simple as that. The body says, please feed me. So I'm going to get your attention by rumbling the stomach, and then you'll feed me, hopefully. So we want to honor that. Okay, I think this is my last slide, but just a quick tip on carb loading and a quick note on carb loading. I don't have time to go into this in detail with you. We want to carb load for races that will take you over 90 minutes. So if you are planning to run, which I would say most of us run a half marathon in over 90 minutes. So most of us should be carb loading. The benefits of carb loading ties back to those glycogen stores. We want to carb load to help us optimize our glycogen stores so that on race day, and carb loading is very specific to race day, we carb load right before the race for performance. So we want to carb load before the race because we want to optimize those glycogen stores, which can help you to improve your endurance performance by 2 to 3%, can extend the duration of steady state exercise by 20%, can postpone fatigue. So like 3 really awesome reasons. Plus it can help prevent you from hitting that wall, around mile 10 to 12, which typically, if it were to occur, it occurs at that time most commonly or most often. We want to carb load 2 to 3 days leading up to the race. And the goal is 8 to 12 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight per day. Focusing on like low fiber carbs is really helpful because we're increasing your carbs during a carb load. We don't want to be focused on all high fiber carbs because there's such thing as too much fiber, and you can really cause some issues with your GI tract if you have like tons of fiber and your body's not used to that. So like white bread, white pasta, white rice, don't be afraid of those foods during a carb load. Those are perfect foods for a carb load. There's no such thing as perfect, but those are beautiful carbs for a carb load. And we want to add some carb-rich fluids in there. Think of like juice. You don't need to be afraid of juice. Think of juice, especially during a carb load. Juice is helpful. Those naked drinks are helpful. Powerade is helpful. Any sort of electrolyte drink that has carbs. Remember, carb loading is not intuitive. Running a half marathon is not intuitive, but we want to carb load because we can get all those really awesome benefits. If you need any help carb loading or creating your plan or even your fueling plan, let me know. We can set up some calls and I can help you with those things. Okay, this is just my last little tidbit and I'm done. Other important factors during half marathon training. Sleep. We want to aim for 7 hours a night of sleep, but half marathoners and marathoners typically need more. We want to try to aim for at least 1 full rest day a week. We are not cross training. We are not strength training on rest days. They are for rest. And then last but not least is stress management. Whether we like it or not, training is stress to our body. Then when we have all these life stressors going on, that's double the stress, which is not going to set us up very well. Injury and illness, like we're at higher risks for those things. Okay, now it's time for questions. Thanks for bearing with me and thanks for giving me a few minutes at the end here.
If anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat or you can come off mute. We do have a question from Anna. Are pre-workouts a good idea before long runs and race day?
As pre-workout, well, hold on, let me open it up. Pre-workouts. So what is pre-workout? Is that like a powder? I'm guessing that's a powder. Yes. Okay. I'm not like a huge fan of pre-workout because I feel like food can be a good pre-workout and give you the energy that you need to run and to feel good. If we're focusing on supplements, we want to make sure they're third-party tested. So third-party tested means, and there's 2 groups that are third-party testers. We have NSF certified for sport, and we have informed choice, informed sport. So you can always head to those websites and see if your pre-workout is third-party tested, but basically that means like supplements aren't regulated. So we're like banking on the manufacturer to like have it all together to make sure that there's nothing added into that supplement, that dosages are correct. And oftentimes we find things that shouldn't be in supplements in our supplements. Third-party tested means that there are these groups like NSF certified for sport coming in and testing the manufacturer's supplement to verify that what's in the supplement is on the label and what's on the label is in the supplement, dosages are correct, all of that. So that's what I'd recommend for supplements, but I don't think pre-workout is necessary. I feel like we get more benefits from food.
Next question. Is there a big difference between gels that have caffeine and gels that are caffeine free? Is it okay to mix and match caffeine and no caffeine gels?
Yeah. Oh, that's really great. I was hoping someone would ask me about that. So Yeah, I talk about caffeine a lot. So most of our research shows the benefits of caffeine on performance and shows caffeine enhances performance when we drink it before exercise. So I would love to see more research on the studies of our taking in caffeine and taking caffeinated sports products during running. I would love to see more research on that. Caffeine can decrease the perception of fatigue. So it could be a really good idea to play around with caffeine. It's not for everyone, but play around with caffeine during your training to see if you feel a benefit from it, and to see if it makes a difference in your training. Those with sensitive GI tracts or who are trying to figure out GI issues during running, caffeine's probably, it's a gut stimulant, so it can rev things up in your digestive tract. And if you're already dealing with issues, I'd be very cautious about that. But it's a good strategy. I would say some of my runners will put caffeine in towards the end of the race when they know it's going to feel hard. And since caffeine can like decrease that perception, it could be kind of an extra little boost, or it can help you kind of push through the tough parts at the end. So play around with it during training and see if it's a good strategy for you.
Let's see. Nikki also asked about caffeine, more about before training runs, and should it be combined with food and some type of nutrition?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. So like having a cup of coffee or some green tea or black tea. I'm trying to think of anything else that has caffeine in it, but those are like the most common ones. So having those before exercise to see if it could enhance your performance and make you perform better, that's not, a bad idea. You could try it, but we don't want to rely on caffeine as our only source of pre-run fuel. We need food for fuel. So combine that with a piece of toast with peanut butter or a banana with graham crackers or something else.
We have a couple of questions about intermittent fasting and if they should
Hmm.
be not doing it on long run days or maybe a few days before that. Any insight on that?
Yep. I don't recommend intermittent fasting during training at all because the problem with that is that you have a window and it can cause inadequate fueling. It can cause you to go on fasted runs, which I don't recommend. We see lots of performance benefits, and even we feel better when we fuel our runs. It can also, like, if you're doing any night workouts or like that can affect recovery nutrition too. So I don't recommend intermittent fasting. If you can meet your nutrition needs within that window and focus on nutrient timing around your running, great. But if it's going to take away from any of those parts, I'd recommend to not intermittent fast when you're training. And maybe during the off season, if it's something that you want to focus on, by all means, like go ahead, but I wouldn't do that for training.
Are there any other questions? You're more than welcome to come off mute if you would like to just say it. I guess that's it. Thank you so much, Emily. This will be saved and posted on the website, everyone. So don't worry if you missed some of it.
Thanks for having me. Be sure to reach out if you need anything. I'm here for you. But I hope everyone has a good rest of your training cycle. I'm running the Richmond Half, so I hope to see you there too.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.